Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me, as always, to learn and to grow. I'm super excited to have you guys here because I have a wonderful, wonderful guest that I've been hoping to have on for a while, Dr. Jennifer Stewart. If you haven't heard of Dr. Jennifer Stewart, she is an optometrist, of course, an international speaker, a writer, consultant, and entrepreneur. With a deep interest in sports vision, Jennifer is a co-founder of Performance 2020. She was also the recipient of the Thea Award for Innovation from Women in Optometry. And of course, she is a fellow grad of the New England College of Optometry. Go Neko. Thank you, Dr. Stewart, for joining me here on the 2020 podcast.
There's
very nice.
There we go.
I get to call up Dr. Purcell and ask him this anyway.
Thank you for, I should have worn my Neko sweatshirt. I should have been like all decked out, but thank you.
Well, I'm not, although, hey, I have this.
There you go.
It sits here. I got this thing, right? So they sent me that, I think, for doing some speaking thing a while back.
There it is.
Very happy to keep it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And I love your podcast. I've been such a fan. So thank you for asking me. And I'm excited to talk about everything we have planned to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Me as well. It's funny, just on a personal note, I think the first time we met in person was just like briefly at like Vision Expo or something.
Yeah.
But it felt like it was like I was seeing a friend, and that's kind of the beauty of the digital world and social media and podcasts and all this kind of stuff. You just kind of get to know people, and we're lucky to have so many good people like yourself in the industry, honestly, really. So it's always fun going to events like Expo to meet people. The thing that really has intrigued me, actually, maybe it was New York, because New York. I also saw you speak at the Vision Monday thing.
Yeah, the Global Summit.
The Global Summit, that's what it was. And really, when you're on stage and speaking about what you do and what is to come, in optometry, I was really, really intrigued with what you had to say. And one of the big things is I am a huge sports fan. Like, give me anything sports related, I will watch it, listen to it, read it. And that's like been your career, right? You've been in sports. I want to start with actually before you became an optometrist, because you are a high level athlete yourself. Tell us a little bit about what types of athletics, what type of sports you've been into.
I think I've done everything at this point. So I was a track and field athlete all through high school. I competed in Division I track and field in college. I was a triple jumper, long jumper, and a shot putter. So I was more of a field event specialist all through college. I spent a decade after college competing in triathlons, all different distances from short to half Ironman. I've done road races, a marathon, trail races. I was competing as a cyclist for a little bit. And then most recently, I competed in Olympic weightlifting for the last 2 years. So
yeah. You competed in Olympic weightlifting.
I was not in the Olympics, but
no,
Olympic
the style of weightlifting.
Yeah, the lifting in the Olympics. So
you compete, but still to compete in that is incredible, because that's a pretty, I think I've heard you kind of speak to that a little bit. It's not just lifting weight, right? You got to learn the movements. There's a lot of mechanics and biomechanics that go into that to make it efficient. Again, stuff that I'm happy to go into the nitty gritty about, but we'll save the listeners all of that kind of detail. So what did you learn? What do you feel like you took from your time? I mean, you're still competing in various sports, but like at Div 1 level, what did you learn competing at such a high level and that you're able to bring it into your career?
Yeah, it was a lot of work and a lot of time management. So I feel like as a Division I athlete and a pre-med student at the same time, I was the only one, kind of combining a really challenging course load with a sport that is all year. I did indoor and outdoor track. So from August through May, we were competing and training. So I think time management was the biggest, really learning how to prioritize time and school and studying and work. And that really has helped me and translated. Even now, I'm super efficient with my time. I schedule everything and I know when I'm most effective. Like we were talking about before, I'm a morning person and I am not an afternoon or evening person. So any hard work or really thinking I need to do, I usually block out my calendar for the morning to do that. I do a lot of writing, so I do all of that in the morning. So I think kind of competing like that really made you figure out when you're your best and when you do your best at certain things.
Yeah.
And I had to get it done at certain times. So that's still how I work. Around 2 o'clock, I shut everything down. I can still do other things, but I know I'm not going to write an article at 2 or 3 o'clock because no one would want to read that.
I'm sure people would still enjoy it, but fair enough. It may not be your best work. A few months back, I had on Dr. Haley Wickenheiser. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Haley Wickenheiser, hockey player, ice hockey player. And that was one of the questions I asked her as well, is like, obviously she competed at like the highest possible level of her sport. But time management was one of the key things that she said too.
Yeah.
And that translated into her going into medical school and all this kind of stuff as well. But the other things she took away, and I wanted to ask you, which I think I've kind of understood, at least from my conversations with athletes, is I guess the word I'd use is grit, right? So just the ability to kind of like, you got to push through this practice or this thing. And would you agree, like grit, you get that from your sports training and that translates?
Absolutely. I love the word grit. And I think it's something that I always am looking to do something new. And even when it's hard and thinking of a new business to start or a new venture, or even just presenting in front of a huge crowd can be intimidating, but you kind of get up and you do it. And that's how I felt when we started our sports vision practice. It was really a lot of work, and just creating something out of nothing was really challenging, but it was every day I got up and every day I did something. And even if I didn't feel like I was making progress, when I'd step back and look a year or 6 months in the rearview mirror, I'm like, wow, we really have accomplished a lot. So I would definitely agree. Grit is part of it, and grit in practice. The last couple of years have been really challenging as a business owner. And I think all of us at times wanted to give up and just be like, oh my gosh, what else can we handle at this moment? But grit really gets you through. And I think it helps you be a better leader to your team. I mean, going through COVID as a business owner, none of us knew what to do or how we were going to come out of this, but we had to keep pushing through, especially for our staff, to say, we're going to be fine. I don't know when we'll open or how it's going to look, but we'll all be fine. So I think that grit really translates into leadership as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Would agree in leadership by example. And like if your staff sees that you're just continuing to push through no matter what the obstacles, that they'll get the courage, motivation to do the same. I definitely agree with that. So let's talk a little bit about practice. Again, a big sports fan myself. I've seen what you've done, at least a little bit in the sports vision space. I find that super intriguing. I would love to learn lots more about it and share that with our colleagues too, to see if there's any interest out there for our colleagues to kind of get into that space a little bit as well. But first off, how did you find yourself in that space of sports vision? I mean, of course you're an athlete, but how did you decide to open up an entire sports vision center?
So I knew that it was a field or a niche that I was interested in. I knew I was introduced to a colleague, Dr. Don Teague, when I was a first or second year student at NECO. He was in Connecticut at the time and really was one of the largest sports vision practitioners. So he invited me to come by and see what he was doing. And I knew that it was something I wanted to do. I just didn't know how. And I spent the time at NECO figuring that out and really trying to get involved in the community and network. I went to every national meeting possible just to be in the room with other people who were doing sports vision, to be a sponge and learn from them. And I thought, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to start a sports vision practice. And it took me 10 years. So life gets busy. I bought a practice 3 years after graduation. Yes. And then was busy growing the practice, learning how to run a practice, had 2 kids. And finally in 2015, I graduated NECO in 2007. So just under 10 years. In 2015, we opened Performance 2020, but it was something that was always on the back of my mind. And every year it was on my list, and the year would just go by and I'm like, okay, I didn't get to it yet, but I will. And finally there's never a good time to start a new business. And my husband and I decided, if we're going to do it, we should just figure out how to do it. And we did.
That's awesome. So many lessons in that. One is like, if you want to be part of, or you want to start a business, or you want to become something, like you have to really put yourself into it, like fully immerse yourself in that world, right? Going to all the conferences, speaking to everybody. And then finally, yeah, there's never a perfect time to open a business. There's no such thing. There's always going to be crazy
Like
obstacles. You just got to do it. That's awesome. So what types of, I mean, I assume mostly athletes, right? What types of patients, athletes were you seeing?
mostly hockey. So Canadian people, I know that is. My Canadian friends, I know were very big hockey fans. I was not a hockey person at all. I had never been to a hockey game. I knew zero about hockey. But we ended up with a space in a large hockey facility, and it ended up being the perfect location for a sports vision practice because we were around the athletes. There was a strength training facility, a chiropractor group, a physical therapy group, and just hockey players everywhere. So I had to learn about hockey pretty quickly. So I kind of just delved into learning about the positions but I was very honest about what I didn't know and that I didn't pretend to be an expert. But we, by nature of just the people we worked with, we mostly worked with goalies. So I got to be really good at understanding what the goalies' needs were. And that translated to lacrosse. We had a lot of lacrosse players. Another sport I had zero knowledge, had never been to a lacrosse game. So I probably picked the two sports I was least familiar with, but really grew to appreciate working with the athletes and understanding what they needed and how to design a training plan for that. And just really impressed with the work ethic of the athletes that we have and how much they love their sports and how excited they were to teach me. And I mean, that was almost 6-7 years ago, and we're still close with some of the first athletes we worked with who are now much older. It was a slow evolution of starting a business and hoping, at first expecting that people would, as soon as we opened the door, they'd flood in and go, wow, this is the best business idea that you've ever heard, and we want to give you lots of money. And that didn't happen. No, it doesn't happen that way. But again, grit. I got in front of anyone who would listen to me talk about sports vision. I spoke in front of coaches and athletes and parents and people and did demos, and just I pounded the pavement to get the word out. And again, networked and learned from other people. I joined the International Sports Vision Association. I'm on the executive board, and really just, of course, right? and just I found like-minded people who were equally passionate and excited to share their knowledge. And now I feel like I'm in the role now to do that for other people. And I'm really excited about sports vision. I find my role more is now outreach and education and helping people develop their sports vision practice and help them, kind of figure out what they want to do and how to do it and be out there talking about it. So I open invite. We have our next conference in February of 2023 in Texas. So it is an international conference. So anyone that's listening, please visit International Sports Vision Association if sports vision is something you're interested in. We have such a really awesome program already set of great speakers. So not just optometrists, we have athletic trainers, physical therapists, chiropractors, kind of open to anyone that works with athletes. So it's a great way to network and learn.
That's amazing, actually, because that was going to kind of lead into one of my next questions, which is, what if there is an optometrist out there who's interested? How can they get involved? I mean, that's perfect. That's what you did, is you immerse yourself in that world, attended these conferences. So definitely recommend checking that out next year. Is there something you would say to another OD to tell them that it's a viable specialty or a valuable specialty for them to bring in or to lean into? Is it something that you can just tack on to your existing practice if you have space, or do you have to set up a totally separate, like a performance center like what you had?
My answer is yes. So all the above. And it's been fun the last 3 weeks. I've been doing my lecture for the NECO students, and we've kind of, the way I set up the first 3 lectures was an introduction to sports vision. What is it? My second lecture was sports vision for the primary care optometrist. So we decided to add that in for students who might graduate and are not in the right situation for them to open a Performance 2020 completely separate from their location like I did, but they might be in a commercial location or an associate in a practice that might not have sports vision, but we talked about ways to even just start talking to patients differently about their needs and fitting contact lenses differently, prescribing sports eyewear, which is a huge passion of mine, making sure we're recommending independently tested protective eyewear. So every one of us could practice sports vision today, tomorrow, next week, depending on how we talk to the patient in our chair. And that can go from that to opening up, multiple locations of sports vision practices. So it's such a cool niche and a specialty because you can do it, the next patient you see after listening to this, you can go in and talk to them a little bit differently about their sports and hobbies and make specific recommendations without having any fancy, cool equipment and spending any extra money. Or, I've worked with lots of doctors on setting up clinics where they say, I can't buy a building or open another space, but I have an extra lane or a small corner of my office. Can I start doing, additional training? And we work together to figure out what equipment they can buy or fit and develop a program from that. So it can be, as simple as just thinking about your patients as athletes to developing this complex program and facility. So that's the great thing, is anyone can do it. And it just depends on where you are today and where you might end up tomorrow to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Definitely, I've had a very big interest in sports, as I mentioned a few times now, but sports vision as well, but never really kind of knew where to start. Now I know. But every time I think about sports vision, Jen, I think about like the thing where the person's like tapping on. Is that awesome. Is that one of the things that most people are doing? Or are there like other types of, can you give me an example of a couple of different, I don't know, tests or activities that you run with athletes?
So that's what you're probably thinking of. We have the synaptic sensory station, which is like it's basically a big touch screen that athletes are using. That one is kind of their eye-hand coordination or quickness of movement. So that's one of my favorite pieces because it's just a really great piece of technology. It's also one of the most expensive. So it sometimes is, that people kind of they get stuck because they look at the price tag of this equipment. They're like, oh, no, I can't do that. But just like starting a practice, maybe you don't get an OCT or an Optos right away, but you start with some other equipment and then put that on your list. And when I work with consulting clients, we have our dream list, our wish list of equipment. What do you want? What can you afford? And how do we get there and plan for that? And, when I speak to the students, I tell them you could do sports vision now with a lot of the tools you're using. Like we use a lot of heart charts and Marsden balls. And I know that people are like, oh my gosh, I'm digging deep for my binocular vision knowledge.
Yeah, vision therapy, binocular vision. That's exactly it.
And I'm not a binocular vision person. I didn't do a residency. We do a lot of this in free space. So one of my hesitations to start was I refer out for binocular vision. I have some really great colleagues that do that. So I've had some people reach out to me and say, well, I'd love to do it, but I didn't do a residency, or, I don't do a lot of binocular vision. And there's different ways of training athletes. And we used a lot of that technology, but we used it kind of at a distance. So we had heart charts, Marsden balls. You get really creative with balance. So balance boards, BOSU balls, trampolines, lots of ball tossing and juggling. If you just watched Hard Knocks, the Detroit Lions, there's
I watched that one actually.
They just did like their preseason, and one of the players was juggling, and he talked about he loves to juggle because it helps him with his hand-eye coordination. I was like, yes, there it is.
That's
so
awesome.
We did a lot of work with just kind of ball toss drills, strobes, which are the glasses that go on that flicker and kind of block your vision to help you with anticipating and your brain processing quicker. Those are a little bit more of an investment than heart charts and Marsden balls, but you can do a lot with very little and just having a lot of creativity. So the barrier to entry is not quite as much as most people think. And, just with some creativity, you can really do a lot with less.
Yeah, great. That's great to know. I find the analogy there. I've definitely leaned into dry eye as a kind of a specialty over the last couple of years. And you know, a lot of times, well, for me personally, and I know other ODs as well, when you look at a specialty like dry eye, you're like, whoa, I want to have the big shiny, you know, IPL plus the big mybographer, and that next thing you know, it's $150,000. But really, if you want to start doing dry eye, you just need to first start asking the right questions, right? Ask the patient the right questions, and you already have a slit lamp, you already have fluorescein, you already have some of the tools that you need. Do that first.
Yeah.
Do the questionnaires,
Yeah.
and then slowly work your way. And I think that sounds, you know, very analogous to what you're saying about sports vision as well.
Right. I mean, any practice, a lot of the people that are coming in are athletes, whether they're kids or adults. And we forget our adult patients are competitive athletes as well. So it's not even having to go out and recruit new patients and new athletes to your practice, just by asking better questions and then giving different solutions that they might not get at a, you know, a normal exam. Already now you're a sports vision doctor, you know, thinking about smaller prescriptions. You know, I will prescribe -1/4 in one eye for an athlete because it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know, really just making sure that your optical has good, independently tested sports protection and that you're up to date on all of the standards of different lenses. That already sets you apart as a sports vision doctor because you know something more than the doctor down the street. You're really up to date on the newest technology. You're looking out to protect your patient. And you're offering a service that most practices are not, with a very small amount of education and investment in time and money.
Right.
And also just talking to patients differently about nutrition and supplementation, talking about glare and contrast and visual acuity, and just asking good questions and finding out, digging a little deeper into what they might be struggling with, and maybe recommending a macular supplement to help with contrast, to help with glare. And they're going, oh, I didn't even think of that. And just being a little different and a little more thoughtful.
Absolutely. And I think that actually is a perfect segue into the next segment of questions I wanted to ask you. You know, a lot of this talk about specializing, asking kind of unique questions, something that will distinguish your practice from other practices and chains and other entities out there. You know, on my podcast, I've been having a lot of conversations about those types of things, about private practice, about corporate, about private equity, and so on. And one of the core themes that keeps coming back through those conversations is, well, the optometrist has the power to distinguish themselves, to kind of weather any storm and overcome any, you know, challenge or obstacle or competitor or whatever. And I definitely feel that way myself. And you clearly are very invested in that world of private practice and independent optometry yourself. And not too long ago, you're going to have to remind me of the title, but you work with, you write for Independent Strong. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and what your title is there?
Yeah, so I'm the new professional editor of Independent Strong, which is a newer Jobson publication, which is aimed at supporting independent practices, whether optometry, opticianry, just really supporting independence in eye care. And I was super honored to be asked. And my whole career, I've been in practice for 15 years, and I've been in independent and private practice the whole time. So I really am strongly invested and truly believe in independent eye care. And I love optometry, and I love all of the ways that you can be successful. And I think no matter what changes happen, and you know, optometry keeps evolving and things keep changing, but I think a private practice that provides great patient care and is always on the cutting edge will be successful. We can't rest on our laurels, so we have to just be, and any business is like that. You can't be complacent. You always have to be improving and looking to be better. And I think in independent eye care, we have such opportunity to do that with, whether it's specialties, you know, dry eye, sports vision, low vision, myopia management, aesthetics. We have such a lot of different things we can offer our patients. Independent frames, really, you know, looking at what you have in your optical, independent labs and lenses, and supporting other businesses that support independent practice, and just being around other doctors that are independent. And, you know, I'm a member of IDOC. I've been a member my whole career, and really, you know, being part of organizations that are focused on independent eye care. So I'm super excited to be on the team for Independent Strong. We are really providing high-level content just to support our fellow independent practitioners. So I encourage you, if you haven't sign up or visit the website. We're really working hard on some great content. We have 2023 pretty much planned out. So
Wow.
really excited about what we're doing there. So August was my first month as, or I guess September was my first month as the editor. So, I shared a lot about what brought me into optometry and private practice in my editorial, and then talked about storytelling, which is like one of my favorite things to talk about. Yeah. So I feel like any part of optometry that I'm in, it's supporting my fellow independents and really giving them a voice and making sure they feel supported and feel that they are able to be successful.
And do you feel, with all of the changes that have happened, I mean, we are right now, I feel like in Canada, alarm bells are ringing, right? Yeah. Specsavers is kind of the new entrant into the Canadian market that's making a big splash, and that's got everybody kind of on edge. But private equity has been a factor here for a few years now. But the US is always ahead. It's a much, much bigger market. So things like that have been happening there for longer, the value chains, the private equities, and the so ons. Do you feel, from your experience, that private optometry will always have a place in the industry? Will it stay strong? Or, is there a fear of potentially just all being kind of gobbled up at some point?
I think if anything, it's growing right now. And if it's, and it could be the people I surround myself with, but every forum I'm on, and you're on them too, there's just I've seen such a change in the questions people are asking and the path that they are looking to take. And especially new grads and newer practitioners, I've seen more posts about cold starts, practice buy-ins. I want to practice the way that I want. So I think that there is this now resurgence of, I think it was COVID partially, that people kind of took stock of how they wanted to live their life and how they wanted that to look. And I think that a lot of them are choosing private practice, and either it might be that they don't find a practice they want to buy, so they're starting cold. Where when I was graduating, I felt like I didn't see that as much, and maybe it's social media and you're just seeing it more. But a lot of my classmates are now, either now or a few years ago, starting cold. And we've been out 15 years, but I'm seeing it more in the newer grads, and even just our colleagues that have consulting. There's a lot of cold start programs that are coming out and are out now that are aimed at supporting these practices. So I think if anything, there's going to be a resurgence of people starting practices that more support and align with their personal beliefs and values, versus just taking a job to do it. And that's super exciting. And it's really fun to watch people say, I went into optometry for a reason. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday who had a change in her role. And she said, I went into optometry school. I remember saying when I was interviewing that I wanted to do X. And I came out of school and I took a job, and it couldn't have been farther from that. And I interview students coming into NECO, and they all say that they want to go in to help patients and they want to spend time with them. And then they graduate and they might end up in a role that it doesn't support that. And I think now people are stopping and saying, but why am I doing this? This is not what I want to do. And how do I create that role that allows me to be successful and happy? So yeah. I think private equity, there's always going to be a challenge. I mean, I just sold my practice in June. I was in private practice. I owned my practice for 12 years. I was there for 14. But we had a Warby Parker open up a mile down the street 2 years ago. And we were like, we have a Pearl Lens Crafters, Warby Parker, Costco. Wow. I'm probably missing one, all within, a 1 to 2 mile radius of our private practice. And if you provide the level of care to your patients that you want to, and you differentiate yourself with service and product and your staff, I truly believe that you can be successful with the Warby Parker right down the street.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear. Both that that new grads or just ODs in general are looking to open up their own businesses. That's heartening and reassuring to hear. I feel like the pendulum kind of tends to swing, right? So I think it may have swung all the way one way, and now it's coming back a little bit. So that's really nice. And also, you know, it's good encouragement for those who are concerned about the competition from these other entities to know that they can still survive and thrive, you know, with that. It all just kind of becomes noise, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just background noise. There's nothing that really like out of all of those that sticks out and says, you know, you have to come and see us. We have the opportunity to be that you know, that beacon, so to speak, that people see as like, that's the place I should go instead of the chains and so on. You touch on it a little bit. You clearly have some experience in the business realm, consulting and so on. I'd love to ask you a couple of quick questions, because I know this is something that a lot of ODs, one, we don't have as much background and education in it as we would like to have. And so we like to kind of hear a few, if you wouldn't mind sharing some key little things that someone who's listening to take home, take back to their office and say, okay, I got to look at these KPIs or metrics and, you know, work on these few things.
I think first is knowing that you should be looking at metrics and KPIs.
That's a good place to start.
That's, I mean, knowing that there are things you should be measuring. And I will tell, there's a, you know, a quote about, you know, what gets measured. Wait, what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets improved. I have it up on my board because I live by that. So if you're not, you know, it's great to go in and say, like, you know, I need to, you know, fix my business. I need to be better. And you know, I'm guilty of it too. I'd go to one of these IDOC meetings and I come back and I'm so excited and gung ho and I'm inspired and I want to make changes, but you have to know what you're doing before you can make those changes and then know what you're going to end up with. So I've been a big fan of metrics forever. I've been a big fan of GPN, the Edge software. I've used it. I think I was their second or third account, like when it was, you know, 4 generations of technology from what it is now. But, you know, first is measuring and not just saying, you know, I'm busy and or I'm not making enough money, or I need to just see more patients because I need to make more money. If you don't know how many patients you're actually seeing or what the behavior is of those patients, you can't make good choices and changes and then monitor if those are working. So I think first is, if you're not measuring that, you should be, and you don't have to do it with an Excel spreadsheet or a pen and paper. It can all be done for you. And, you know, the software like the Edge pulls that all out of your practice management system. So as long as you're categorizing everything correctly, you can just have a dashboard that you can look at. So I think first is getting set up to do that, and then measuring whatever you're looking to improve. And if, you know, a lot of people are looking at capture rate is a big one. People, I think, either under or estimate, I think overestimate probably their capture rate, but then they wonder why they're not making more money. But they're like, everyone's getting glasses. We just need to do this. But you have to look at how many actually are doing that. And so capture rate's a big one, but then having a plan in place if the number is not where you want it to be, instead of going, oh, you know, it's online sales, or it's Warby Parker, it's, you know, whatever, it's Costco down the street, not throwing in the towel if that number's not quite what you'd like it to be. So I think first is measuring it, and then putting a plan in place to say, oh, shoot, I thought it was, you know, a lot higher, but what are we going to do about it? And not reinventing the wheel to do that. There's people out there, just like in sports vision, there's people that want to help. And, you know, the team, you know, obviously I'm an IDOC member. They have a great team that will help. The Edge team helps too. So, you know, it doesn't have to be that you live in a vacuum and you do this all on your own. And whatever challenge one of us is having, guaranteed many of us have had this before. So not feeling like you have to start over and, you know, climb this mountain alone, but reaching out to consultants and people to help. And once you've identified that, is education and having staff buy-in, not just saying you need to do better and running back to your office and going, now do it. But really, you know, embracing that it's a team approach and investing the time and money in education and your staff. Spexy is another one of my absolute favorite training resources. It's an online training platform that is a lot of fun and great education for everybody on our team, and really helps us understand how to be better in our opticals. So once the training is in place and you're doing it, then continuing to measure and not setting it and forgetting it, but being continuous on monitoring metrics and kind of this whole, identifying to, kind of checking where we're at and then continuing to make changes. So I know it was a long answer to your question.
No, it's great.
My favorite things to talk about are metrics and not feeling overwhelmed. I think a lot of people go into it with good intentions and they look at, maybe a dashboard and they're like, oh my gosh, like forget it. But picking one per quarter, pick one in January, or pick one in October, October 1st, I'm going to measure capture rate, and I'm going to look at what our capture rate is currently. If it's not where I'd like it to be, we're going to have a team meeting about that and make sure everyone in my office knows what capture rate means and how does that affect our practice, our bottom line, our success. How can we be better at it? And then really kind of every month, maybe saying, here's where we are. We're getting better, but we all have to be in. I have to be better at recommending multiple pairs in my exam chair. My front desk needs to be better at reminding people to bring their glasses, their sunglasses, their sports eyewear, and planting that seed. My technicians, maybe mention that as well. And my opticians are kind of the final stop, that they're just fulfilling the treatment plan that I've put in place and that we're all working together towards this goal. So I think just not biting off more than you can chew and feeling overwhelmed that you have to change 20 metrics. Because if you try to do that, everyone gets disappointed, discouraged, and it falls apart. But if you focus on one at a time and then keep circling back and making sure that you're continuing to measure that and supporting your team to do that, I think that makes a big difference.
Amazing advice. Thank you. Because I do think you're right. People get overwhelmed. I'll speak for myself. I do this all the time. I'm like, I think everybody gets this, but I'm like, you know what? Let me speak for myself. I know that from my experience now, if there's one person that feels a certain way, I think you mentioned this, like probably other people have the same kind of concern. And a lot of times it's like you feel overwhelmed or you're almost like scared to even look at the number in the first place, but you got to rip that Band-Aid off and just look at it. And then you just look at, and then you know what your starting point is.
Just one for a quarter. Don't worry about, your transitions and your non-glare and your, average frame price, your average lens price, and your capture rate, and go, okay, we're going to do all of this, because it won't work. But if you focus on your capture rate, and as your opticians are selling more frames, then hopefully by nature of that, everything will start to improve. And then you can start to really look at, okay, let's pick one more. But you have to keep remembering we're still continuing on our capture rate. We're not just going to drop that, but you can kind of build, and you're gradually layering on to where then you can become really, nitpicky at smaller things, but really looking at bigger picture ones first.
Right. Great. Thank you for that. I think that's encouraging for anybody who's not so comfortable with the metrics and that side of the world, their business, definitely a nice place to start, one step at a time. So Jen, at the end of every podcast, I ask 2 questions to all my guests. Before we get to that, actually I have one more question to ask you. With everything that you're doing, a mother, an entrepreneur, business owner, that you just sold your business. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Editor of Independent Strong. You're on the board of all these things. I'm missing things, award winner and all of these. So the question is, are you a superhero, and what is your superpower?
I wish. I mean, that is so flattering. I think we are all superheroes. All of us entrepreneurs wear a superhero cape at one point. All of us parents, we all are superheroes together in kind of pushing through. It's that grit again, just, getting up and getting it all done. Sometimes I look at my day and my to-do list and I'm like, how am I going to get through that? And then I'm a big fan of lists. So I have like literally old school. I buy these steno pads and I make a list of what needs to get done. And all day, even if I have already done it, I put it on the list and I cross it off. So that's my superpower, is making lists and really being accountable and feeling good that at the end of the day, I've crossed all of them off mostly. But I truly love optometry. And I think that's what really helps is I'm so excited about the field, and I really am. The last 2 years have been such a blessing to be able to get out there and speak to so many people and write and be able to have a platform to talk about independent practice, sports vision, all the things that I'm super passionate about, and being able to hopefully inspire people. And that's what I really love. And that's what keeps me going. I mean, I love doing things like this. I was so excited to be on your podcast. I'm such a fan. When you guys were at Vision Expo and you had like a camera crew following you around, I was like, that's amazing.
I blame Daryl Glover for that.
That was pretty awesome. So, you know, I think it's just, I'm inspired by the people I've met. And I think you're right. You know, the last 2 years, I've met so many people on LinkedIn and Instagram and social media, and Vision Expo East. It was like seeing old friends. I feel like I knew everybody. I'm like, we're old friends. Like, I've never met any of you in person, but we've all collaborated so much and support each other and are so excited about what everyone's doing. And my favorite thing that I do is connecting people to help them either in their business or support. You know, I'm like, oh my gosh, have you met so-and-so? Because you guys should get together. I think you could collaborate really well. And that's what keeps me going, is how many people can I meet and how can I help them meet other people to be more successful?
Oh, that's amazing that you do that. I would call that a superpower, actually. That's beneficial. You know, I'm sure it feels good to you, but that's uplifting the whole profession by connecting, you know, good people with other good people. So thank you for doing that.
Of course.
Before we jump into those last two questions, where can people connect with you, you know, if they want to learn more about you and you know, say hello?
Everywhere? No. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, kind of. I'm trying to be better about, I'm just not good at Twitter. So I'm trying. So if you find me on Twitter, I'm trying to be a little bit better there, but I'm super active on LinkedIn and Instagram. My consulting company is called OD Perspective. So I have a website, I have a blog. You know, I aspire one day to have a podcast like this, so you never know.
But I like your tagline on your website. What is it? Believe in your vision?
Believe in your vision, yeah.
I like that. That's very good.
So I will be at, you know, meetings, and I will be at the Optometric Management Symposium in November. Oh, very awesome. So we'll meet in real life again. Yes. I'll be at the International Sports Vision Association meeting and the IDOC meeting both next February. You can find me on Independent Strong. I'm super active there and always looking for great content. So if you've got an idea, you know, shoot me a message. I'm also on the GPN I Thrive platform, where I have a monthly column on communication. I'm also hosting a 5-part webinar series, which might be done by the time this airs, but a 5-part webinar series on building your authentic practice. So if you miss it live, you can still sign up as an I Thrive member and listen to the recording. So I'm excited about that. It's basically everywhere.
Amazing. Again, going back to the superhero thing, like there's even more things that you're doing that I didn't even know about. Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you. So the last two questions. Number one, if we could step in a time machine and go back to a point in your life that was difficult, that you were struggling, you're welcome to share that moment if you'd like it. No pressure on that. But more importantly, what advice would you give to young Jennifer at that time?
Oh, that's a good one. And I didn't know these ahead of time. So I will say these were not in the list of questions I had. So I would say, kind of off the top of my head, the time that I was struggling, freshman year of college, was a huge struggle for me. And this is why I especially love interviewing optometry students, because they are kind of in that realm. I went into college. I was very strong in academics in high school, and kind of went into college coasting, thinking that I could just, you know, get through it really well. And I failed miserably, and I was academically not doing well my freshman year, first semester. I was the only female athlete out of all the fall athletes who was stuck in study hall for the whole semester. And I went, oh my gosh, I'm here on scholarship. What am I going to do? And I had to, again, that grit comes out. I had to really buckle down and figure out how to be better and put in the work and the time where I didn't really have to do it before. So I reinvented myself. I really focused on academics. I put the time in. I think I struggled with college and the freedom and sports and the load of academics, but then I turned it around, and from then on I was a 4.0 student. So I really was like this flip-flop, but that really helped me through optometry school. As you know, it's a heavy load, and I love being able to share that with the students I interview, because they always ask me about the academic load going into optometry school. So I think that really helped me prepare for life, just realizing, you know, sometimes you have to put a little more effort in there and you'll be rewarded, and it's a great lesson.
That's great. Everything that you've accomplished and that you're doing here, all the amazing things, how much of it would you say is due to luck and how much is due to hard work?
That's a good question. I think we make our own luck. So what I love to share with students, and like my undergrad students I talk to, is making your own opportunities and networking. I'm part of the Optometric Women's Association, which is an organization that is built on networking and really supporting women and developing leadership skills. And I think most of it comes down to putting yourself in the right place at the right time, but you have to be there to do that. So, go to meetings, go to events, sit down at a table where you don't know anybody and put your phone away and talk. And, and just introduce yourself to people, connect on social media, connect on LinkedIn, say yes to things, because I think a lot of it is luck, but a lot of it is not who you know, but how you've been out there and the opportunities that you create by opening yourself up to doing cool things. And what I tell the students when I talk to the students is, I say, I've never applied for a job in my life. All of the opportunities I've had have come from being out there and being visible. And, starting as a student, and I tell the students this, I was the keynote speaker for our optometry, the career symposium. And that's what I said, go to the meetings as a student, shake people's hands, introduce yourself, like start making connections, go to join your local society, join the AOA, go to meetings and meet with people and sit down with them and introduce yourself to reps and people and companies, because I think that's how you create these opportunities, is being visible and being active and being supportive. And I hope, I love to create opportunities for other people, and I feel like that comes back tenfold for me.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun.
That's amazing. Amazing. I love that answer. And I really do hope all the good work you're doing and all the support you're giving, I hope it does come back to you tenfold. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen, for coming on the podcast. Really, really loved having you on. And I'm so glad we're finally able to coordinate this.
Yay. And then we'll be in real life in a couple months at Vision Expo. So I hope to see everyone there too. Oh, no, Optometric Management.
Optometric Management. Yeah, I'll see you there.
Yes.
Awesome. And well, thank you everybody who's tuned in to listen or watch this episode with Dr. Jennifer Stewart. Make sure you go check her out, see all the cool stuff she is doing, all of the cool stuff that she's doing. And, if you're interested in sports vision, make sure you look into that as well. As always, if you got any value from this episode, please make sure you share it, send a text message, put up a screenshot on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever, and let people know that we're having these conversations. And I will see you guys in the next episode very soon.
Thank you.